Have you ever felt caught in that relentless cycle, chasing happiness, trying to avoid pain, only to find yourself sort of back where you started, maybe even more frustrated?
Uh-huh. It's a common feeling.
What if there was a way to cut through all that noise, the endless debates online and offline, and actually find a profound inner peace?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into some truly profound ancient texts. We're looking specifically at a collection of Mahāniddesa excerpts to try and unlock just that.
Exactly. And our mission for you, our listener, is really to extract the absolute core of these rich sources.
Okay.
We want to reveal the fundamental qualities of what these texts call a sage, or perhaps a purified one, and understand the true origins of our suffering, our conflicts, and maybe most importantly, discover the practical path to liberation. Liberation from attachment, from unhelpful views.
So it's not just old wisdom for history's sake.
No, not at all. Think of it as a kind of shortcut, a way to get well informed about how to live a life genuinely free from vexation, from that inner turmoil.
I like that. A shortcut to real peace. Okay, so if we're aiming for freedom from vexation, we probably need to start by defining what true peace actually looks like, according to these texts. What do they tell us about being a sage?
Well, they give us a remarkably concise definition right off the bat. They talk about a santo, which translates as a sage. And the text says, Yasa loke sakan ati asakana sokati dame sukana gachati save santo tifukati.
Wow, okay. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. If you boil it down, it's describing someone who has no personal possessions in the world.
No possession.
Doesn't grieve over loss or things not existing.
Right.
And this is crucial, does not cling to fixed views, doesn't sort of latch on to particular doctrines or ideas.
That last part feels really challenging. No fixed views.
It is radical, isn't it? It points to an openness, a non-clinging, even to our own cherished opinions, a kind of mental freedom.
No possessions, no grief, no fixed views. It almost sounds, well, aspirational, maybe, in our world today.
Yeah.
But the texts go deeper, don't they, into this idea of ultimate freedom. They talk about someone called a Brahmana who teiltiahati, which you mentioned means stands on dry land. What's this dry land?
Yeah, teiltiahati, it's a really powerful metaphor. This dry land represents nibbana.
Nibbana itself.
Exactly. And it's described as the cessation of all formations and the relinquishment of all foundations.
Cessation of all formations. What does formations mean here? Like thoughts?
Precisely. Think of it as anything that forms or manifests temporarily our thoughts, yes, but also feelings, sensations, even our physical bodies, anything conditioned.
So everything impermanent.
Pretty much. So to stand on dry land, metaphorically, means you've let go of everything that is formed or conditioned. You're firmly established in a state of utter freedom beyond that constant arising and passing away.
Wow. Okay, so it's freedom from the whole churn of existence, not just physical things.
That's
And then we have these other terms, the muni and the dono. Are these like different facets of the same ideal? Or do they offer unique perspectives?
a great question. I'd say they definitely build on the same ideal, but they highlight different aspects.
Okay.
A muni is defined primarily by profound wisdom. The text says, "Monemvukati nyati."
Wisdom.
But it's not just intellectual knowledge like book smarts. It's an understanding so deep it directly shapes your conduct, how you act.
Ah, so wisdom in action.
Right. And the texts actually break down 3 types of this sagely conduct. Ayamonia, which is body sagely conduct.
Like wholesome actions.
Yes. Then vakimaniyam, speech sagely conduct.
Wholesome speech.
And manomaniyam, mind sagely conduct. So wholesome thoughts. It means abandoning all unwholesome actions through body, speech, and mind, every avenue.
So it's comprehensive. It's not just what you know, but how that wisdom translates into how you actually live moment to moment.
Perfectly put.
And the dono, the purified one. What's their specific contribution to this picture?
The dono is described as one who has washed away. That's the literal meaning. Washed away or eliminated the defilements.
Defilements like greed and hatred.
Exactly. Greed, hatred, delusion, the big ones. And again, this is achieved through that deep wisdom we talked about. But crucially, the text adds, Nahitena manyanyati yadidam dihasuta mutesuva.
Okay, that sounds important. What does it mean?
It's profound. It means they don't conceive of I or mine in relation to anything they see, hear, sense, or cognize.
Anything at all.
Anything. Imagine experiencing life fully seeing, hearing, feeling, but without ever attaching that sense of ownership or self to those experiences. No, this is me, this is mine.
That's hard to even imagine, a deep non-attachment to the experience itself.
Exactly. It liberates you from reactivity, from getting hooked.
That vision of utter freedom, being unstained like that, is incredibly compelling. But, okay, if that's the ideal state, the obvious question is, why is it so darn hard to achieve? Why aren't we all sages?
Huh. Good question.
What do these ancient sources identify as the fundamental obstacles, the roots of our suffering?
Well, the texts are quite blunt, actually. They start with a fundamental truth we often ignore, the brevity and impermanence of life itself.
Right, the clock is ticking.
Definitely. They say, apava jivitaida ora vasasata pimiyati, basically. Life is short, less than 100 years typically, and even if it's longer, it ends in old age and death. No escaping it.
It's a universal condition.
Universal. And this applies to everything, not just lifespans. They emphasize, nahi santi nika parigaha, there are no permanent possessions. Nothing lasts.
Nothing.
And truly understanding this impermanence, internalizing how fleeting everything is foundational. It's key to seeing why we suffer when things inevitably change or disappear.
Yeah, I can certainly feel that. The constant churn of things, wanting to hold on to moments or people or stuff, and then poof, they're gone, and it hurts.
It does.
The texts then talk about something that sounds pretty intense, Atthakavagga, which apparently translates as self-punishment. That sounds quite radical. What do they mean by that?
It really is a striking concept. Atthakavagga jatan, jana pasata medaga. The gist is, fear arises from self-inflicted harm and people live in discord because of it.
Self-inflicted? How?
The texts categorize this self-punishment not as something imposed from outside, but as the direct result of our own unwholesome actions. Actions of body, speech, and mind.
Our own choices.
Yes. Think of violence, lying, malicious thoughts, that kind of thing. These are the self-punishment. The texts even describe vivid consequences, from earthly punishments like imprisonment or torture to graphic depictions of suffering in hellish realms, like being impaled on hot iron spikes or boiled in cauldrons. But the core insight is that this suffering isn't arbitrary punishment. It's portrayed as the direct natural consequence of one's own harmful actions.
So it completely shifts the focus. It's not, why is this happening to me, but how did my actions contribute to this?
Exactly. It's a radical sense of responsibility. The texts state that all suffering, across all realms of existence, animals, humans, even gods, arises from this atthakavagga, this self-inflicted harm stemming from our unwholesome deeds.
Wow. That's a powerful, maybe even uncomfortable statement. All suffering stemming from our own actions. It really forces you to look inward, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. No escaping it.
Okay, so if those are the actions that cause suffering, what about the internal states? You mentioned defilements before. The texts talk about darts, right?
Yes. Darts. It's a great analogy. The sources compare our internal defilements, things like greed, hatred, delusion, conceit, wrong views, sorrow, doubt, to these sharp darts that pierce us and keep us agitated.
Like constantly being pricked from the inside.
Exactly. Imagine living like that. And when we're pierced by these darts, the texts say it causes constant wandering, davati vidhavati sandavati sasarati. It means we're just running around, bouncing through various states of existence, endless cycles of unease and rebirth, propelled by these internal agitations.
So we can't find peace because we're constantly stirred up by these internal darts.
Precisely. It's a vivid image for why we can't settle down mentally or emotionally.
So it's not just what we do, but what we feel and think internally that keeps us trapped. And how does this idea of mind-making fit in? I know I can get really attached to my opinions, for instance, feel like they're mine.
That's a perfect example, and the texts hit it directly.
Yeah.
So, kanti jona mamait. People grieve over what they consider mine.
Grief over mine.
Yeah. This mind-making, or mamata, is incredibly important. And they actually break it down into two types.
Okay.
There's taṇhā mamata, which is craving-based possessiveness, like I want that, I need that, that must be mine. Material things, experiences, relationships.
Got it. Standard wanting.
Right. And then there's diṭṭhi mamata, which is view-based possessiveness. Exactly what you mentioned, clinging to an opinion or belief as my truth, my identity, and fiercely defending it against all others.
Oof. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
The texts explicitly state that someone who truly has no sense of mine in either of these ways simply doesn't grieve when things aren't present or when they change or disappear. The grief comes from the attachment, the claiming.
So it's not the thing itself or even the view, but the grasping of it, the labeling it as mine. That's the actual source of the pain.
Exactly. It really shifts the perspective, doesn't it? Puts the power back in our court.
It does. And speaking of dangers, the sources talk about hidden dangers, not just, physical threats, but something more insidious.
Yes, precisely. Beyond the obvious external threats, accidents, illness, whatever, the texts warn about the real sneaky hidden dangers, the parissayā, and these are internal.
Internal dangers, like what?
All those defilements we've been talking about. Greed, hatred, delusion, anger, resentment, hypocrisy, envy, stinginess, deceit, stubbornness, arrogance, pride, intoxication, heedlessness. The whole list.
Wow, that's quite a list.
The texts group them all as savikilesa, all defilements, savedukaritani, all misconduct, and so on. And they offer this really striking analogy. These internally born defilements hurt a person like a strong axe splitting wood.
Hurt like an axe splitting wood from the inside out.
Yeah. Imagine your own inner states, your anger, your envy, your pride being the very thing that's splitting you apart, causing your own destruction. It's powerful imagery.
It really is. Okay, so that's a pretty sobering picture of why we suffer impermanence, our own actions, these internal darks, making things mine, these hidden dangers. Knowing all this, how do we actually get beyond it? How do we transcend attachment and views? What's the practical path to liberation that these texts offer?
Well, the path begins quite powerfully with abandoning views and disputes, or maybe, more accurately, abandoning attachment to views.
Okay, attachment again.
Right. The texts explain how clinging to one's own views, the mindset of idam eva sakanti pavadyanti, which means this is the truth and everything else is wrong, inevitably leads to nindam, blame, criticism, and ultimately to conflict.
Makes sense. If I'm right, you must be wrong.
Exactly. And the texts are very clear. Duve vivadasa falani brumi disputes have two fruits, and they imply neither is good. You either win and feel superior, feeding conceit, or you lose and feel resentful. It's a lose-lose for inner peace.
So the problem isn't necessarily having a perspective, but clinging to it as the absolute only truth and then fighting about it.
That's it, precisely. That feels incredibly relevant today, doesn't it? With so much polarization.
Painfully relevant.
So the sage, the muni, the texts say, Vadangajata muni no pupiti. They simply do not engage in these born disputes. They don't get drawn into the fight. They transcend the need to be right.
How? How do they manage that?
It's deeply connected to overcoming something called papaññasaka.
Papaññaka, what's it?
It's often translated as conceptual proliferation or mental elaboration. Think of it as our mind's tendency to take a simple experience, seeing something, hearing something, and then spin this huge, elaborate, often problematic story around it, adding layers of judgment, association, self-reference.
Like making mountains out of molehills mentally.
Kind of, yeah, building these complex narratives. And the texts say, at the very root of that compulsive story-making is avijja mula, ignorance, a lack of clear seeing.
Ignorance.
And asmimāna mula, the conceit, I am. That deep-seated, often unconscious belief that there's a fixed, separate I running the show who needs to protect its views and identity.
The ego clinging on.
Exactly. And the path involves cutting through all that proliferation with profound wisdom, which the texts call manta.
So wisdom cuts through the mental chatter and the illusion of a fixed self. Okay. That naturally brings us to transcending craving and attachment more broadly, which really does feel like the absolute core of the issue for so many of us.
It absolutely is. Craving, or taṇhā, is painted in vivid terms. It's called a mahoho, a great flood that just sweeps us away.
Wow.
And kamapalko durakayo, the mud of sense desires, which is incredibly hard to cross. Sticky, difficult.
Yeah, you can feel stuck in those desires.
Totally. But then, amidst these warnings, the texts offer this incredibly powerful, concise directive for liberation. It's almost like a formula.
Okay, I'm ready. What is it?
Ya pupe davisusehi pachatte mahukintena maje teno gahesasi upasanto karisasi.
Can you translate that for us?
Sure. It means dry up what is past.
Not past, like past karma, old baggage.
Exactly. Past defilements, unripened karma, regrets. Let it go. Let nothing be yours in the future.
No future worries or planning based on desire.
Right. Don't create future defilements or cling to future expectations. And if you do not grasp what is in the middle...
The present moment.
Yes. Present formations, present experiences, you will dwell in peace. Upasanto karisasi.
Wow. Dry up the past, let go of the future, don't grasp the present. That's incredibly clear. It covers all the time frames, past, present, future, in one simple instruction.
It truly does. It's a remarkably comprehensive guide to non-attachment, applied to every single moment.
It really puts the focus on that not grasping in the present.
Exactly. And to illustrate this state further, they use that beautiful analogy, Uda bindu yata pipokar padumevari yatana limpati eva munino palimpati yadida yasutemutesuva.
The lotus leaf one.
That's the one. Just like a water droplet doesn't cling to a lotus leaf, or water doesn't stain or soak into a lotus flower.
Right, it just rolls off.
In the same way, the sage, the muni, is not stained or soiled or caught by whatever is seen, heard, sensed, or cognized. They experience life fully, but they aren't defiled or trapped by it.
Experiencing life fully without getting stuck to it. That really does sound like true freedom. How does one actually cultivate this in a practical sense? It feels like it requires, well, a lot of discipline.
It does, yes, but it's presented as a gradual cultivation, not an overnight switch. The texts outline several key wholesome practices.
Okay, like what?
One crucial aspect is seclusion, or viveka.
Like going off to a cave.
Well, physical seclusion can certainly be helpful, removing distractions, but more importantly, the texts emphasize inner seclusion. There's citta viveko, which is mind seclusion, separating the mind from its defilements, like greed or anger.
Ah, mental space.
Right. And then there's upada viveko, foundation seclusion, which is actually equated with nibbana itself, the ultimate cessation, the letting go of all the foundations for suffering. So this inner seclusion, creating distance between your awareness and your own defiling tendencies, is vital.
So it's about purifying the mind from within, creating that inner space. And I imagine this involves a structured process, maybe like the 3 trainings I've heard mentioned in other Buddhist contexts.
Precisely. You've got it. These are the 3 essential trainings. The Sika. There's Adhisalasika, which is higher morality, ethical conduct. Then Atishitasika, higher consciousness or concentration, training the mind to be steady and focused.
Concentration.
And finally, Atipanyasika, higher wisdom, developing that insight we talked about, understanding reality as it is. They all work together, synergistically.
Morality, concentration, wisdom. Makes sense.
And alongside these trainings, constant mindfulness, sati, and diligence are emphasized. Cultivating atapa, which means energy or ardor.
So staying awake and putting in effort.
Exactly. Maintaining a steady awareness, mindfulness of body, feelings, mind, mental objects, and bringing real energy to your practice. Actively avoiding laziness, sloth, or just drifting along heedlessly.
So it's definitely an active, engaged process of self-refinement, not just passively wishing for peace.
Not at all. It requires continuous effort and attention.
And what about ethical conduct in more detail, particularly how one communicates? That seems crucial if you're trying to avoid disputes.
Absolutely crucial. The texts are very clear on this. Avoid mosavaji, false speech, lying. Avoid satvati, deceitful acts, hypocrisy. Basic honesty. Furthermore, a sage shouldn't engage in activities purely for profit if they're unsuitable. Things like virudanya, gabakaran, tikicha, divination, fortune-telling, maybe even certain kinds of healing done solely for gain, or basic kaya vikaya, buying and selling with attachment.
Interesting. So, certain livelihoods are discouraged.
For one fully committed to this path, yes. But most importantly, regarding communication, one must avoid vigahikakata, disputatious talk, argumentative speech, contentious debate just for the sake of winning or proving a point.
The kind we see everywhere online.
Exactly. And the texts warn this kind of talk leads directly to agitation, stirs things up internally, and hinders concentration. It pulls you away from peace.
Makes sense. Hard to be peaceful when you're riled up from an argument.
Right. And the wise, the texts say, nahi santo peisa nikronti. Sages do not retaliate harshly to criticism. They don't hit back when attacked verbally. They maintain equanimity.
Wow, that's a high bar for communication, especially when feeling attacked. And what about things like self-praise or putting others down?
Also addressed directly. One should not engage in katana, which is self-praise, boasting about oneself, or atimani, conceit, thinking you're superior.
Okay, no boasting.
And certainly one should nanya matimanya, do not disparage others based on their job, their wisdom, their morality, whatever. Don't look down on people.
Why is self-praise seen as so bad?
The texts state it plainly. Anaryadma kusalatamahu, the wise call self-praise ignoble. It's not befitting a noble person seeking liberation. It's seen as a sign of an unpurified mind, still caught up in ego.
Right, it reinforces that sense of I that needs puffing up.
Exactly.
This all seems to build towards becoming, what was the term, aneho,
Yeah.
unshaken.
Yes, aneho, unshaken, imperturbable, like the deep middle of the ocean where no waves arise, no matter the storm on the surface.
A state of deep stability. How is that ultimately achieved?
It's the culmination of all this practice. It's about being ito anej asa, established and unshaken. Fundamentally, it means being unaffected by what the texts call the 8 worldly conditions.
The 8 worldly conditions.
Oh, no.
What are those?
Gain and loss, fame and disrepute, or obscurity, praise and blame, pleasure and pain.
Ah, the universal ups and downs of life that push everyone's buttons.
Precisely. We're constantly buffeted by these: happy when we get gain or praise, miserable when we get loss or blame. The unshaken one isn't moved by them. They experience them, but they aren't thrown off balance.
They don't get hooked.
They don't get hooked. And the texts say that one who understands this deeply, who lives this way, has atthakavagga. This means they create no more new constructive volitional formations, no karma, essentially, that would lead to future rebirth.
They've broken the cycle.
They've broken the cycle. Such a person sees shama, safety or security, everywhere, because the danger wasn't external, it was internal. Now that the internal dangers are gone, they are truly at peace, truly safe, regardless of what's happening outside.
This has been an incredibly rich deep dive, taking us through this ancient wisdom, revealing such a clear framework for understanding why we suffer and, maybe more importantly, the path towards liberation. It really emphasizes that it's not about external achievements, is it? Or quick fixes. It's a deep internal transformation, a letting go of possessiveness, of fixed views, of all those defilements we carry around.
It truly highlights that the suffering we experience often isn't just about what happens to us, but fundamentally about how we relate to it, primarily through our attachments, our views, our craving, our aversion.
Right. The relationship is key.
And the freedom described in these texts, the state of being unshaken or unstained, it's ultimately a state of mind. It's independent of external conditions. It's a profound mental toolkit, really, that feels just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago.
Absolutely. So what does this all mean for you, our listener, tuning in today? Here's maybe a provocative thought to mull over, something to take away from this deep dive. Consider how much of your own mental and emotional energy gets spent in mamitai, in that act of making things mine. And that could be anything, right? An opinion you hold dear, a political viewpoint, a physical possession or relationship, even a past experience or a hurt you cling to as my story.
It applies broadly.
What if, just for a moment, next time you find yourself in a challenging situation or feeling upset about something, you consciously paused and asked yourself, if this wasn't mine, this opinion, this situation, this feeling, how would I respond?
That's a powerful question.
What new freedom, what different perspective might you discover just by dropping that label of mine for a second? This really seems to be the core of the sage's path we've explored today. And it invites us all, I think, to ponder how much of our own suffering truly stems not from the world itself, but simply from what we grasp.